I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches Livestream number 36. We will be doing blind portfolio reviews. That is, the portfolios will be chosen at a lottery just by random. And we will take a look at those, kind of break it down, talk about strengths and weaknesses in those, and grab a couple of those, bring those over into Photoshop, and do some paint overs. So I have no idea what we'll be talking about going over this episode. I am going into this blind. I don't know any of the topics. So, yeah, we'll jump into that together. Also, we're kicking off a new art challenge. Now, we've skipped a couple of weeks because I have had several large commissions for a new game, and I just wanted to be able to focus on those, make sure I'm happy with the progression of those. So I dropped doing the challenge for a little bit so I can make sure those were taken care of. But anyway, those are almost finished up, and I wanted to go ahead and start off with a new challenge. We've got people in the chat, so I know the stream is good. Okay. Michael, Santi, George, Jay Welch, Melos, Federico, good to see everybody. Swatches, thanks for taking the time to do the stream again. George, I am happy to. I enjoy doing this stream, so I appreciate you taking the time. Let me see if I can move that a little closer. And oh, I bet when I rebooted my computer, it reset my audio input. Forgot to adjust that there. I'll set that up. That should fix it. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Let me know if that's any better with the audio. Yeah, if you're joining us live, then we'll be just taking a minute or two in order for people to be able to join in the chat before we get started, so I don't have to keep going over the same thing. Otherwise, if you're watching this and recording, you might want to just skip a bit to where we get started with going over the new challenge. Then we'll get into the portfolios. Frederica, reporting for duty. Consider yourself ready, and I recognize you. Alright, your name is a little bit Italian, just a little. Rebecca Pierluigi. I think I'll just call you Pier. That's a better mouthful for me. You are Italian. There's a surprise. Okay, let's go to screen and webcam. There we go. Actually, I need to rename this. You spell it well, Clint. You mean you pronounce it? Alright. Yeah, just to kill time here for a moment while people are joining. Which one is that? Oh yeah, that's off my computer webcam. See, when I'm full face, it uses my webcam, but when I'm on the screen like this and you see the webcam in the corner, it runs off my computer cam. So I have to remember to adjust those. Oh yeah, if you are new to the stream, then thank you for joining, and if you're getting any glitches in the stream, it's probably on my side. So maybe it's on your side, but I know my stream drops a significant amount of frames. Unfortunately, there's not anything I can do about that. That's just the service where I am. So just bear in mind with that. But man, I appreciate everybody being so active out on the Swatches Facebook group. We get daily posts out there, and I also want to say thank you for being just supportive and so civil to each other. I've not seen anybody having egos out there, nobody giving anybody a hard time. Everybody's just really been going in to help each other and give positive feedback, and I really appreciate that. So I'm afraid there's nothing else I can do to increase the volume. I literally have everything maxed out. So I don't know what else I can do. I mean, that's it. That's the only difference I can make. It's all the way up on my mic, all the way up on my OBS. Okay, well, we have 26 in here, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with the new challenge. And we will also review the challenge at the end of the stream too, in case people join in a bit later. But let's go ahead and do that before we get into the portfolios. So we're doing kind of a split this time between a pre-made and a random. I wanted to continue the Spiravel. In the past, we have done what, two or three challenges, on the fictional game of Spiravel, which is a kind of a Dungeons and Dragons medieval fantasy sort of game. And this time we're going to be designing a new character for it. So as you can see here, we've already designed the Soaring Crypts, which is a location, and we've designed Dagon and Daphne Stormbrew, and they come across a person while pilfering the Soaring Crypts, a strange woman named Calypso the Wanderer, and she has a animal companion. Calypso's age is difficult to determine, giving her an impression of a great age, but her appearance doesn't entirely reflect that. She's very connected to nature, having a look of a shaman, oracle, or druidess. She's chaotic and neutral, if you follow some of the D&D outlines of characters. Neither friend nor foe, but she could be either depending on how characters might treat her. So I don't want to see her looking extremely antagonistic or protagonistic. She's very neutral as far as that is. I would depict a image of Calypso with her companion and just a standing full body view over a flat tone background. That can be white, it can be black, gray, whatever it is. But we don't need to do a background and a full scene. We're just dealing with her. Now, as far as more of her attributes, what I would like to do is use the character sheet that we've used before. I'll pop this open. And we're going to randomize a couple of her attributes. So she is somewhere like Seeker, Oracle, or I've seen what all I had here. Kind of a shaman. In a way, she could even be like an astrologer. So I'll just kind of give you an idea. Alright, so I have some trusty die, and we will roll this to get a distinguishing element. So I do column 1 or column 2. We'll be doing column 2. One of these elements over here. Animal legs or fur. Okay, so she can have animal legs like, say, a satyr. Where they? I'm sorry, I need to turn my phone off here for a second. So, like a satyr would have the regular animal legs with hooves, that sort of thing. So we can see that on her. Or she has fur instead of... Now, I'm going to go with animal legs. What I have in mind for the character, I don't really want fur. Okay, what else? Species. She's basically going to be humanoid, but let's see what we get if we roll it. Might be something interesting. Nah. Yeah, I'm going to go humanoid. Don't go too far off of human. We don't need to see her as, like a demon. Let's go into something else. We already know that this will be somewhere in the range of fairy tale, fantasy, mythological, along that line. Does she have a motif? Let's take a look. A ram. Somewhere in her clothing, she has a ram design, like the ram head and horns. So make sure that you work that in somewhere. This is taking place in a ancient empires to Middle Ages time period, and she is female. Um, Arlie asks, wouldn't she be a satyr? She could be satyr-ish. She doesn't necessarily have satyr horns or the semi deer-like face where they have the different kind of nose. But if you want to push her that way, I would be okay with that. That could work. I could see that working for the character. Some sort of that edging on fairy as well. Yeah. So there we go. That is the outline. And what I'll do is I will get this and I will get this and I will be posting those on the Facebook group so that you can go back and check those later and just pull them off to look at them on your own. And I can fix things like not updating the date here. There we go. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, I'm sorry that the mic is low. I literally have it maxed out. There, I can't turn it up anymore. I don't know why it's not enough. Okay. If you have questions on that, feel free to drop in the chat and I will try to answer them during the stream. Otherwise, we'll jump over and start taking a look at some portfolios. Oh, don't forget that she also has an animal companion. And it is entirely up to you what that is. Maybe she has a ram as a companion. That would be fine. Maybe she has something like a raven or a black cat, or I'm pretty open to what she has. Perhaps it's a mythological creature, and you make it up so that there is a similar look between the two of them somehow. That's all up to you as well. That could be cool. Oh yeah, I need a random number generator. We currently have 116 portfolios in the list. And let's see what we get. Number 107. I just need to check to make sure that the gallery is live and that it can be shown on stream. Yep, okay. So we're looking at the portfolio of Rafa Matthias. Yeah, Matthias. All right, over on ArtStation, freelance concept artist and illustrator. Mainly characters, personal work, portrait. See if I can get some of this out of my way. I've been studying portraits lately, trying to apply them. Trying to apply it. Okay. I like this is nice. I like seeing the progression. I'd like, from my side when I'm trying to look at work and sort of critique it, seeing how they're going about it, doing a basic block in, sketching in features, general tones, adding a basic light, value version, and colored version. Okay, can I go this direction? Does this take me to another one? Maybe. Running a little slow. Okay. Trying to improve my portfolio with hopes of getting some commissions. Always open to critiques. Rafik, aka the Parrot. These seem a little big for the stream. Let me make that a little smaller. No, I don't. I'm getting some significant amount of drop frames. There could be somebody else on the internet on the other part of the house, and it will lower what I have. Unfortunately. Okay, if you are new to the stream, I will just, recap a couple of things. That is, I like to take a glance through the portfolio first before I really start trying to break down ideas to see what is consistent across the board and what is specific to individual pieces. Winston, HS process grayscale to color. Oh yeah, from Overwatch, that's right. Character. Lines, cleaning lines, basic values, basic tones, adding other lights, checking values. Had a lot of fun with this one. Didn't intend to create a scenario, but I got carried away. Okay, a whole underwater scene with her. Interesting. Slarty, Lucas, Snugglestab. Hey, how's it going, guys? Okay, so what are we seeing here? One of the things that I noticed, like on this guy, is just the use of space. That most of the image is not the character. And that would be one of the first things compositionally that I would suggest trying to improve. You've got a good dynamic going on as far as like kind of the fisheye view, but it's making the character really small. You could crop this scene into just this, and you don't really lose anything. I mean, unless there's a real reason why you need all of that out there, I would think that you probably should just cut it off. On the execution, brushstrokes is usually one of the lowest things that I comment on, but I will make a note of that here because this is all very controlled and the tones are very smooth, and you actually have a lot more visual noise in the background clouds and in the water than you do on the character. I'm finding that a little distracting. I would expect it to get simpler as it goes back rather than get more busy as it goes back into the background, right? So the clouds have simpler tones and a smoother finish than the character does, if that makes sense. That would be one thing. Like on the pose on this one, intellectually I know what's going on, but I need to see that back arm. It just positioning him so that I cannot see either his hand or his elbow really is not the best call. So I would want to see that, and I feel like that leg is too far away. If we're looking at the perspective of this, that's the horizon line right there. If that's the horizon line, this is, right here next to us, and that is, 10 miles away, however far the horizon is. To be able to have that foot that far away from this foot, and that's all the way to the horizon line, this would be like 30 feet away from that foot. I know it gets weird with the distorted perspective and stuff, but really that needs to be more over here. And you can still have him laying back. And with the pose on that arm, I would suggest just making it so you see like part of that elbow sticking out behind him, or you could even have that other arm right here so that he's holding the staff, you know, back there. You either need to be a little lower. It's probably going to be going the other direction. Oh, I'm going to go back to the main one. There's a lot going for this. In that you've created a distinct character with like the really long eyebrows, the definitive silhouette of the big feather, but it still feels very generic in the execution of the actual face. I would consider finding some references and find a reference of someone, some guy, to serve as a as an inspiration, just to take some anatomy cues from. Because like looking at this, it's generic lighting, and then you've just sort of refined the generic lighting, but there's a lot of nuances to the way that the skin works and the way that the features can work. And I would suggest doing that. That might be a decent idea. Let's see. Look up the... These are just reference stuff. I'm trying to think what folder some of these are under. It reminds me a bit of like this sort of thing. But you can look at that and you see that it has the general shapes, but he does really good in order to develop the smaller shapes within the face. And so that you have the volume of each one of these. And there's also slight variations in the color of the skin tone. It's a little warmer around the eyes because the blood vessels are closer to the skin. You know, cooler around the jawline where you have a bit of stubble. Then there's just a lot of nice volume and smaller skin tones inside of those. Here's another one. And you can see that each part of the face has a slightly angular form to it. And you can see it on these other faces as well. And I think this would be a good place to get some inspiration as far as where to take the piece. Because he isn't going for straight realism. And I'm not getting that impression at all. So how can you get this and then take it a bit further? Let me grab Photoshop. Also, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, even while I'm talking about this sort of stuff, and put @Swatches in the title. Put @Swatches in the comment so I know it's directed at me and it'll flag it. Yep. So, for that. And you might kind of look at that as just the style reference, right? So, and I'm thinking in terms of angles. So when I'm doing that, I like to choose something that helps support that idea. So an angular brush, like this, right, helps me to think in terms of angles. And if you need to reverse the angle, all you have to do, of course, is just do that. But that is nice, and I have some other ones that are more flat instead of just the round one, right? Because you think in terms of rounded things when you use a round brush. Swatches, I know you already mentioned this, but how would I submit something for the next art challenge? Michael, what I'll do is create a Dropbox folder for the submissions, and I will share the link of that over in the Facebook group. And all you need to do is just follow that link, and you can drag and drop your image into that folder. Yeah, I don't have the folder set up right now, so I will get that done and post it probably next Tuesday or so. Okay, let me go back to this. Now this one has a small amount of color variation in it. And what I'm going to do is just break up some of these super round shapes, which are generally even considered more feminine, to doing like that. See kind of the flat tone on top of the flat angle on the nose there. Use that one. I had too much variation for this one. Then the volume around the eye. And something else, don't forget that the white of the eye is usually darker than what you expect it to be. This fellow also seems to have fairly dark hair. So I'm going to suggest that his eyelashes are going to make his eyes even a bit darker than that. Oh, this is sort of interesting with that. Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe he's, part something else. Maybe he's a half something else as far as like species. But this seems very generic when you have that. I would kind of expect to see something a bit different with the little beard hair here. Like, it does a second thing here, or it's coming down to something longer, or he's got like, two little braids coming off of it. Pushing it a bit further. And then trying to get a bit more volume out of those. And really does the nostrils and the outside of the nostrils and the center part of the nose have the same level, like across. Usually one is further down the other, which is the center one. Center bit where it comes down. Oh, wrong one. Unless there's something specific about this fellow's eyes, I'm not sure why they would be so light at the bottom. If you're trying to go for more of a Middle East feel, they usually have a bit darker complexions, and if I'm not mistaken, they usually have darker eyes. Maybe you're just trying to play off of the gemstone thing, but even then, I'm thinking a bit darker would actually fit better. The lips have good volume there, that's nice. Now this is somewhere like that. There's enough little light on that backside in order to help tell some of the forms. That's not a bad idea. And it's something that's very popular with that sort of art style. Just be able to work in some of that other light. Another thing that's common is that their lips are a bit darker. Trying to add a bit more color into it. Right now the color was just so kind of monotonous. There just wasn't much variation in any of it. Add a bit of that in there without having to spend ages working on it. Okay, and this also, the fabric up here is looking really, really solid, not so much like fabric. So I'm gonna say that that is a bit odd, and the lighting is odd on that too, because the light on this nose tells me the light is basically coming this direction, but the fabric is being lit essentially the opposite direction. We're getting light coming up from below. So I'm not sure how that's supposed to work, but the light's doing that, then we're going to get a nice, shadow from this feather. I probably want to light that feather up more at the bottom, and it can go off maybe into shadow as it goes up. And for the rim light like this, consider trying to work it to be telling the form a little more and not just a haze. Right now it's just like this kind of bluish haze, but that's not doing anything to tell us the form of what's going on or the texture. So we can do a little bit of that. Now all of a sudden that blue isn't just this fuzziness, it's kind of telling us how this whole thing is shaped and a bit more about what it's made of. I'm sorry, I can't make the mic louder. It is literally maxed out. It's turned all the way up. And we're likely going to get some dark hair right there by the temple. Alright, well, I don't want to spend much long on that, but hopefully that just kind of gives you an idea. It's just coming in here and grabbing, planes of the face and trying to give a bit more soft angles to it, if you can say it that way. Just kind of start finding some angles that work for the piece. And working with those in order to make it a bit more interesting, not just simple sane curves on everything. And doing that basically for each part of it, just trying to find good shapes for the shadow tones and developing the form like around the eyes. And there you go. Well, that's one. What else do we have? Oh yeah, I need to mark off that we looked at that one. Next, let's take a look, see what we got. Looks like a DeviantArt page. Okay, here we go. Alright, next up we have Scrap Chap. So I don't know, let's see, can we go to profile? Does it say who that is? Okay, Mel from Gouache. I don't know what his proper name is, but this is his gallery. Scrap Chap gallery over on DeviantArt. Has a collection characters, environments, spaceships. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. There is. There's some strong pieces here. Angel of Embers. Yeah. I'm not sure what this is. She's nice, but I don't know what that is. We should do a spaceship design sometime. I'm gonna have to put that on the list. Spaceship design could be a lot of fun. I wish I had to do more spaceship designs. It'd be I would enjoy that. Arbor Town. This is a good concept. Yeah, I mean he's not getting bogged down in the details. It looks like he's got a building brush that has windows built into it, and he just copied it a bunch of times. Looks like he started with a photo. You can see sort of a town photo underneath that, and then he's just added on to it. Okay, yep, concept art. Not happy with this one. I think there's a good idea in there. I like the sort of really soft tones on the character, all within a very light white range. Maybe the rest of the scene didn't turn out as well as he thought, but there's certainly a good idea in there. Spooky Skelly speed paint. Yeah, that would work. Okay. No obvious mistakes here. He's not making like basic fundamental mistakes. For this month's CDC, simple lighting. Looks like he used just lines to hash it out, and then went in and colored it. Basic background. Something I do see consistent across so far the ones that we've looked at is they're all concept. Like they're not finished. Like this isn't a finished character. There's not. It's like you get it to the block in everything, block in the lighting, block in the colors, have this pose, but it's not refined or detailed. And I think that you need to have some of those in your main portfolio that are really well refined, like Centaur concept. The Centaur concept is good. I mean, it's like a Mad Max version of a centaur. It's got 6 legs and chains and monocles. I mean, like goggles. But I feel like it's one step off from being actually finished, and from getting a bit of extra reference that it might need. I would like to see that. Some of these finished a bit more. Like this one feels like it's finished a bit more. That pose is getting me off a little bit. With the the bottom the legs are facing that way, the upper body's facing this way, and that arm's behind her. I just kind of got to question that. I just think that doesn't seem right. I would suggest changing that. Something else here is you're indicating a lot of wind, which is fine, and it should give you the opportunity to have blowing snow to really play up that cold feeling. And so you could have all this snow that's being kicked up to have it blowing out, because it's obviously enough to blow this heavy fabric. So doing that also, and we should have snow up on the woolly mammoth. So yeah, I like to see like snow up here and some of the snow's being blown off of that. Then the rocks in the background don't have any snow on them. So the snow's sort of inconsistent. It either needs to be embraced or it needs to be removed. Um, yeah, the comments saying that her outfit and color doesn't match with the environment, and that's true. Uh, there's nothing indicating to me that she's, for some reason, immune to the cold. So I would expect her to be either more covered or, I don't know, less human to indicate that, that. Usually, if you want to do a humanoid that's immune to the cold, you make them blue, and indicating, in fantasy terms that they're cold natured. It's really basic, but yeah. I realize that you're using the red to she's controlling this thing. Other things you could do is maybe, even add like icicles hanging off of the tusk of this thing and just have it like it's just a, walking tundra of ice and snow. But I see the sort of refinedness of this character is really nice, so I do like seeing that over some of the other just concepts. Mm-hmm. This piece really reminds me of Jason Chan. Don't know if I have that in this folder or not. Yeah, this lady. I don't know if he was going for the same thing, but yeah, Jason Chan did a series book covers and had this lady in it, and I don't know, it just reminded me. So, if you want to know how to develop that a bit further, you could even look at this and see how he did it on that one. Something that is a little odd on this character, though, is the way that this free hanging cloak is sucking right up to her waist. There is just no reason why it would do that. Um, a free hanging coat like that, or cloak, is going to stay in straight lines between the 2 points. The point that it's hanging from and the point that gravity is pulling it to. And so it should be almost straight from the shoulder down to here. There's no reason why it would suck in at the waist without some sort of tie or cinching element to keep it, snug. Yeah, I don't think I really need to do repaints on these. So yeah, I'm just talking. Jeremy, so I checked the Facebook page and didn't see the challenge. Is it being revealed here? Yeah, we talked about it at the beginning. I'll recap it before I finish the stream and then put all the details out on the Facebook group. This is sort of cool. Fire Imp. Yeah. The pedal effect with the glowing underneath and changing from smooth to large scales. That's it. I like that. This is a stronger piece. Mm-hmm. I would suggest having the background a little different so that the character stands out. The leg and the chest are all getting lost to the background, and even the back here, it's getting confusing. My suggestion would be to get this lighter hazy tone, you know, from just the lit smoke, and let that be behind the character around here, so that the dark of shadows would stand out against it. Yeah. Those look entirely different colors. I wonder why. Still set on RGB. Oh, maybe because it's 16-bit? That's strange. Yeah, it might look okay on some monitors, but you know, getting a lighter tone. And then what you can do is just use more silhouettes to do the work back here, instead of having to light everything. And even something like that, even like the tail, right? It could be dark. And that's a good thing to start working into your piece. Is some things show up because they're silhouetted, and some things show up because they're lit. And going between those in your pieces. So the top part of the image stands out because it's lighter than the background. Then the bottom of the piece stands out because it is darker than. Yeah. A small thing, but I think it's something that would help to improve the piece overall. Oh. Yeah, my main suggestion is pushing some of the pieces a bit further. And it's likely some of the most boring thing to do. I have a feeling he's more like me, that he likes blocking everything in, but detailing phase really loses interest. But you need to, in order to hit that next level, you got to step up um, the detailing and overall execution. Like, take a look. I looked at this piece, came across it the other day. I mean, look at this thing. It's ridiculous. The execution on this is just on another level. Like, Could this guy back here block in this scene? Yeah. But he's not likely to do this. It just takes so much time. But yet, I mean, it is one of the best pieces I have seen recently. It's like that tree. That tree is not well detailed. That's just a, bristly, noisy brush. The same thing with the background. A lot of this is just very noisy. But the part that needs to be refined is refined, and everything is kept within its value and color range. So one of the strongest pieces I've seen, and you don't need to do that on every piece. In fact, that's the artist's name. I don't know how you say it. Yulia Litvinova. Found it out on ArtStation, I think it was. So yeah, I would say check out their work. That is pretty insane. Even like this, I mean, it's very clean. You can tell that time was really taken to, or I like this. This is one of my favorite artists, Ruan. But if you look at this, I've got to actually open it. Trying to zoom up a little bit. I can't do it on the preview. So if you zoom up on it, you can just see it's so well controlled, and there's still definitely a painterliness to it. It's not trying to be a photo, and that's where I think that you would have to go with your work, kind of speaking to the artist whose gallery we're looking at, and just pushing it so that you're refining smaller and smaller elements, and going into this and just developing each section and pulling out a bit more. I'm afraid that's a fairly basic thing to say, but I mean that's where you're at. You're not making obvious mistakes. Every individual piece has small problems in it. My individual pieces have small problems in it, but there you go. That's my thoughts. Number 35. Okay, what was that link? Let's take a look. Some Chinese guy? Maybe. People have submitted galleries like years ago, and the links aren't always active, so check that. All right, we're looking at the portfolio of Benedict Barone. That last name. Out on ArtStation. Okay. Mainly environments have couple of character pieces, Dota 2 custom icons, art test characters. All right, let's flip through these and see what we got. Okay, final image. Looks like he's playing around with some brushes, perhaps. Just concept. I like the colors. It's nice. Phoenix fan art. Okay, I don't know Phoenix. I suppose that's a character. Head, wings. Okay. The thing on that is you have the head tilting down this way, and the wings do not reflect that. The wings tell us that the angle of the image is going like this, and the helmet is going opposite to that. So like this side should be lower than that side. The tip of this one should be at that same angle up here. Yeah. Golden Gate, small village built on the side of a hill after discovering a peculiar gate. That's nice. That's a nice image. Just some concepts. Yeah, I like that concept the most. These colors and execution is good. The cool light on the side of that, excellent. Like it. Feels sort of odd that all the buildings are on the side when you've got all of this land up here. Like, I can kind of get it, like if you built up everything that you could over here and then you kind of spilled over. But why are they all over here when you've got all this flat land here? Okay, another thing is this foreground section, whatever this bridge, path, whatever, road, is really angular and precise with all these straight lines, and it is at odds with the painterliness of this background. So I don't think that you need all these straight lines. All you need to do is indicate a couple of cracks in some bricks and stones up here, and then we would just infer that it's made out of blocks. We don't need perfect straight lines for all that stuff. This also is not really doing anything for the scene. In fact, you could probably... I'll hold my hand up here so you can see. That's not doing any good. You could probably cut this image off here and along here and there, and you don't really need all that out there. Unless you're going to be doing something with this, I'm not sure why you have it. Like if you want to turn it into an arch, so we're looking at it through an arch, that's one thing. Or if like this is if there's one of these house dwellings right here in the foreground, so that it actually creates a pattern of distance, would be a bit more useful. But I love the execution on that. That's excellent. Blood mountains. Okay, mountains that are like all reddish. And this is what I would expect to see as a concept, but it needs work before being like a finished piece that I would put in my gallery. Or if it is a concept, then list it as just like environment concept. If I was an art director and I was thinking about coming out here to look at your pieces and see about hiring you, there kind of needs to be a division between illustration and concept art, at least noted, so that if I came out here and I saw that, I might be thinking, oh, this is one of his environment concept pieces, but maybe you're thinking, no, this is one of my finished illustrations. And I would expect to get more out of a finished illustration. I'd expect it to be refined more. So clarify that, and it's sort of a side thing, but I'll make note of it. Like this, the snow patterns on that are very random. And if you look at snow on mountains, there's certain patterns to it. It tends to follow an angular pattern, not just a splotchy pattern, because rocks form in strata. Right, the rocks form in layers, and as the mountain, is pushed up from, geologic formation, then it breaks off in those strata. So when the snow comes and lands, it follows that same strata pattern. And unless the rocks are just more volcanic, the volcanic rock is just, it's all bubbly and it forms all kind of weird shapes. It is more random. So, just take a look at some mountain ranges and follow a couple of those patterns. Like this seems a little generic. Let's see, maybe... I almost feel like this is red grass over black. I can't tell if this is supposed to be like red sand, red dirt, or like red grass. So I would just need that sort of thing clarified. Oh, this is nice. I like this. Good use of texture brushes. You didn't go in there and try to paint 10,000 leaves. What you did is just use texture brushes to drop in a lot of stuff. And then you went in and added a little photo texture to add some limbs back there. And then a little photo element of some trees back here. I would suggest when you drop in the limbs like these guys, just set them to either multiply or darken so that you don't get these little light spots around the edges of it, just dealing with the layers. This is cool. I can see this being a good technique or style to use on a tree for the right project. I almost wish you didn't use any of the photo elements. Textured brushes are okay, but I almost wish you didn't use any of those because this works so well as its own style that I think that you could use your own textured brushes and just continuing that same pattern to establish that back part. Character concepts, more realistic, more stylized. The realistic one is okay. I mean, if you just need to do some concepts of background characters, that makes sense. But if you're going to change the style, you need to change not just the proportions, and I feel like that's all you did. I felt like you got the proportions of this guy and moved it around, but you didn't change your shape language, and you didn't change your rendering style, and you didn't change the colors. And it just feels like you came up with some really odd proportioned character. So I'm going to suggest not going this way unless you do a lot more work to find a better way to do a simpler style. It's like you're trying to get in the same amount of realism for something that should not have that kind of realism. Yeah, so go find somebody that has a more stylized version of art and see how they handle shapes. Yeah. Like you probably don't need to be using texture brushes. You need to be finding simpler shapes to make things out of, more angular, less detail, less little like hair detail than all this little gritty detail down here in the brush. Alright, doing some more environment. Photo elements going on here, doing some painting on top of that. It's so big on my screen right now. I kind of want to make it smaller so I can. I like the shapes of the land that you're dealing with. Just the flow of the mountain ranges and the water and everything. That's cool. Something that is deterring me from the image is the colors. This does not have a very interesting color palette. Everything just feels washed out. Where you just did everything in black and white and did a bit of color overlay, but it was very kind of held back. So I'm going to suggest find an image that has some dynamic color and lighting and draw from that. Otherwise, if you're going to do something that's washed out, then like embrace that by making it really cloudy, really misty, kind of kind of forlorn, and embrace the dullness of it and make that a strength rather than just having it generally washed out. Yeah, that would be one of my biggest critiques. The lighting coming down through here is cool. It's just like the shadow and the light get, and this is something that you're establishing, that there's a very distinct light in this scene. The light is it's what you might call a strong light, which means that light and shadow areas should be very definitively different. And we don't necessarily have that on a lot of the image. Up here we do, and on this part up here we do, but down here it's like, is it lit? Is it not lit? Can't really tell. And then over here, what's lit? What's not lit? Who knows? And why is there so much light over on this side? I don't know. The sun's on this side. So if you are going to establish that this scene has strong light, you need to carry it through. Everything has a distinct lit or shadow part to it. And same thing down here. The water is either going to be lit or it's going to be shadowed. And that doesn't really hold up. It's sort of halfway in between right now. Gorge waters. Good action to it. I like I'm getting the feel of the water going down there, the splash going on. This is nice in that it is not perfect. Right, it's got angle to it. You can see that the rock has washed out and broken off in different patterns, so that's nice. The boat, I feel like, is one of the weakest pieces. I know that you went in and did a decent amount of detailing and cleanup on it, but it feels like a toy boat. Maybe that's what you're going for, I don't know. But it feels like a toy boat because it doesn't have any of the things on it to give me scale. It doesn't have any people on it. There's no ropes for the rigging. There is no, barrels. There is no rowboat. There's no, I want to say steering wheel. Whatever they use to steer the boat. Yeah, none of that is on there, which makes it look like a toy boat. So I'd almost say either remove it if you want it to be about the scene, but if you don't, then it becomes about the boat, and the boat is in question. Dystopia Punk was recently announced. My favorite mod of one of my favorite games is probably getting an all-new version. So to celebrate the hype, I just had to make some fan art. This is the medium punk class of Dystopia mod for Half-Life. Okay. Alright, this is one of those cases where I'm almost sure that you came out with 90% of this from your head and didn't get any good anatomy references. The execution of this is excellent. I like the light up here. I can feel the texture of it. But this feels like you just pulled it out of your head. And if you got, I don't know if you're, this is a guy, right? I think this is a guy's portfolio. Yeah, Benedict. Just use just use a lamp or your phone light or something, and just take a reference photo of that light pattern coming down on the face. And of course, you don't have to copy it verbatim, but the way that the shapes light, and the way that the skin folds, and which folds line up with the light, those are all things that are not necessarily being shown anatomically correct. So I'm going to suggest doing that, and that could greatly increase the authenticity of this piece. And this is another case where we're having a clash with the lighting, right? There's three things that you always want to get consistent with the lighting: the direction, the color, and the intensity. We're establishing up here that this is a very intense light. There is a really high disparity between the value of things being lit and the value of things being shadowed. But it's only applying to the face. That lighting is not applying to this. This is practically the same all the way, where this part should be really bright and the part in the shadow should be really dark. Same thing with this. I don't feel, I mean, it's a little more here, and this is almost close enough. I'd almost want to push that a bit further to be acceptable. So yeah, make sure you got that equal there. This is a good place to just come in here and do a little shadow tone underneath that paint fleck. Oh, can I just pull that into Photoshop? To give the feeling of dimensionality, and because the lighting is coming down from the top so strongly, you can actually put like where the paint is chipped off, and it actually has a thickness to it if you want to go that way. And then like just on the anatomy, I don't know that I have any good photos I can just do offhand, but now this is going around over here. And that's not going to get black. There's going to be a lot of tone of light coming through that skin because the subsurface scattering. And you don't want to just drop to black. And remember that it can be in shadow and not be black, and that still be the top value. I mean, the darkest value. Like if you want them to have, I don't know, maybe they have black eyes. I don't know if they do. I'm not that familiar with the game. But you can still have distinct light and dark pattern. That has a little more variance in it than I need. Now you were right. I like you adding some of that color over here. So make sure that that is in there. And the ears are naturally a bit more warm in tone than the rest of the skin. Looks like you were wanting a little bit of that light that comes through. Same thing down here. The nose is a place where you're going to get some of that subsurface scattering. This is a great place where you're going to have some ripples in the skin, right? Because it's pulling. Can't say that I've studied stitch patterns and how it affects the skin very much, but I assume it's something like that. A lot of fall off there. Sorry, I was just trying to concentrate about what I was doing there. Went quiet for a bit, if you guys don't mind. Yeah, instead of making just lines for wrinkles, try to think of it in tones, and you can light them from the top. So what you do is just like slightly lower the base value, and then you create them not by creating a dark line, but by lighting the top of the folds, and that way it's not so line based. And I don't know, does he not have eyebrows? I take it he doesn't have eyebrows at all. And then like up on this part up here, this needs to be really bright. Use something a bit more textured. And then fade off as it comes down, right? I mean, a little much. It's probably a bit more matte than that. I was just thinking if there was some tone back there instead of just straight black. Because straight black is just visually very boring and it doesn't have any depth to it. It's a completely flat, kind of lifeless thing. And what we want to do is we could even light it in such a way so that the background is slightly lighter. His head could get dark there on the edge. So that's a direction that you could take it. Hopefully that sort of makes sense. Is just fleshing out a bit more of the tones in the face, not having to jump to black immediately. Give us a bit more of the mid darks in there. I was just spitballing the anatomy, but I would suggest going out and finding or taking some reference photos and then make the lighting more consistent with how bright different areas are across the board. Like, I even feel like that could be a bit more as bright as that light is. Yep. There we go. Yeah, I think that's good for that. Any comments or questions from the chat on that or anything similar? I love answering questions from the chat. Feel free to drop them out anytime. Oh, I need to mark this one again. I think we'll look at one more and then we'll wrap up. I do have a couple of commissions that need to be finished for next Wednesday, and although they are sitting pretty good right now, I do want to get some work done on those a bit later today. Everyone is shy. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Some days we just get a lot of questions. That is not the right one. Get a lot of questions and comments, and other times I'm just talking to myself. Okay, here we go. Catherine asks, how do you manage doing commission work, Patreon, live streams, etc.? Doesn't it get overwhelming? Yeah, it can get overwhelming, for sure. Like, that's one of the reasons that I stopped doing streams for, well, 2 weeks while I had the commissions. I know myself that I have a tendency to take on more than I really should, and learning to not put so many things on my plate at one time. And another one is just dividing your day up so that you have better control of your time and you can work off blocks of time. Something that I've started doing, and maybe I'll even do like a Vibrance episode on it, but what I'll do is set a timer on my phone, and it'll be for 45 minutes. And during those 45 minutes, I work. I don't play any videos. I don't listen to any music. I'm just working. All my focus is on the work. And I do that for 45 minutes, and then I stop, and I get up, and I do something like, do some push-ups or whatever. Go do something else, and then I come back. And at that point, I can jump projects if I need to. So I think and I'm off for 15 minutes, and then I come back. So that's an hour, 45 minutes of working, 15 minutes off, and then you come back and you start the next thing. And then I get 8 of those per day. So, I'll do half of those need to be on my main project. So, 4 of those hours need to be on, let's say, my commissions, if that's my main project at the time. Then those other 4 get divided up between whatever my other projects are. Like, prepping for new Swatches videos, or working on stuff that needs to get printed, or, putting an hour or 2 into the Patreon. And that has helped me to get more done and not get so overwhelmed, because it allows me to get attention onto each project, and I can get quite a bit done in 45 minutes when it is my primary focus, when I'm not trying to just jump between things the whole time, or when I'm not getting distracted by other stuff. So hopefully that helps, that gives you an idea. Arlie asks, Swatches, would there be a situation where you would use very hard shadows as they did in that piece? Yeah, certainly there is. It all depends on what the lighting situation is. Is it possible that lighting was correct in the way that it was very light in the shadow and completely black? Very light in the light, but very black in the shadows, yeah. But it wasn't consistent. So all of this and this and this and this indicated that the light should not be that stark. So I used the majority of the piece to determine what the main light should be, or what you've already established, and that is the light isn't quite as stark as they're depicting it. And then I just went along with that. And visually, which would be better? For it to have a little more tone into it, or to push everything else to be more stark? I think it's a bit better if you have a little more skin tone in this case, so that's what I opted for. The other thing is, if it is going to be this stark of light and dark, then those patterns don't seem right. The shadow patterns and the way that it's coming across the face doesn't seem correct for that lighting. So I'm going to ease off of that. But yeah, there's some excellent images and certainly photographs that use stark light and dark patterns. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is the portfolio of Ricardo Zoppello. We have artist bio, digital painting, traditional plein air. He is in Italy, born in '87. International Comic School. Okay. Let's just start with digital paintings. It's right at the top. Lost in the Dungeon. Clear image, understandable. The lighting is, I think, one of the main things here, that you have this very, very warm lit torch as your light source, but a very neutrally balanced everything else that's being lit. So all of this needs to be really warm because it's being lit by a really warm torch. Then you got some sort of like moonlight or something up here, which would be a bit of it, but this isn't doing anything for me. Like, you just got this big rock right here, kind of in front of your big creature. If you're going to do anything, then whatever these eggs are, I'm going to assume they're like spider eggs. You can have a couple of big ones here in the foreground and bring them even closer to the foreground, and that will actually add to the narrative of the scene so that we can tell what they are and infer what these are from them. Maybe they're translucent, maybe you can see some little spiderlings inside of this egg sac thing, and that would actually add to the overall image. Right now it's just taken away. So, yeah. Oh, we've got a little Liliana piece with all of her undead minions. I'm liking that. It has a certain style to it too. You're not trying to go super realistic. Natalie asks, do you like traditional painting? I found it really helpful when I started digital painting, especially when it comes to painting style. Yes, I do like traditional painting, and I think it would be recommended for digital painters to do some traditional, for digital painters to do traditional painting. It makes you think in different ways. It makes you think about laying your image out in different ways, and makes you think about your brush strokes more. So, yeah, I would recommend that. This is odd for me. This line that you have coming down to her navel. Yeah. Just this whole pose is close, but it's not right yet. Like, the face is turned down a lot. And if it's turned down that much, I feel like you'd see more of the... If it's turned that much, the face has to be forwards more. That's what I'm thinking. The face needs to be forwards more because her chin is tilted down quite a bit. Yeah, you might need some more references for this pose. It's just slightly off. And I feel like I'm looking at these legs as if they're on my eye level and not that I'm looking down at them. Some small tweaks there on her pose would be helpful. I like some of the gestures going on, the expressions, the poses. These hands are nice. I feel like these guys could be bigger. These two guys. Like, just increase this guy's size, but move him down to the corner a bit more. Because he is only slightly bigger than her, and he's quite a bit closer to the camera than she is. So, how much bigger she is than that guy, this guy needs to be to her. So his head needs to be 50% bigger. It's his hand 50% bigger. This head needs to be larger as well. Small stuff, but yeah, that's a nice piece. This is good. A lot of good. I would say this is a good graphical piece. Just the graphics of how it's laid out, kind of the composition of shapes. That's nice. Good flow to the shapes. I like how you simplified some of these forms. The point on the front of that with the long trailing thing behind it. It's good. I almost want to see some connection between the shapes of these two skulls. Like this guy's eye socket is very forward, right? And this one is just very circular. I almost want to see that this one's eye socket kind of goes the other direction, right? It leans the other way. In the same way that this comes to a point on his chin, I almost want to see this have a similar point on it. I guess one of the biggest things for me is this hand, where it's getting lost. Like you have this little edge light on it, but if you just put a nice green glow behind it, the whole hand, then it would be better. Because those dark pointed shapes would be excellent back in this area. Yeah. Good. You've got some good poses and just the layout of your shapes. Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. Alright, I'm only casually knowledgeable about Diablo 3, so I can't make a call on whether that's accurate or not. I really like the rendering of a lot of this. That's really good. I feel like we're getting some wasted space. I feel like they could both be bigger in the scene, and it wouldn't even be problematic to have, you know, the ends of these blades going off the scene. It doesn't necessarily have to fit perfectly in frame. These two are almost too symmetrical for me, or too mirrored. Those ribbon things. You've already established that you're okay with a little asymmetry by having this come off over on this shoulder. And I kind of want to see that these two are a little more random and maybe they go off the other side. So visually the ribbons go off that side for this guy, but this goes on that side on this guy's shoulder. So they sort of balance each other out. Cosmic low res. Okay. Catherine says, I would like to learn traditional painting, but I'm intimidated by all the stuff that's needed. Easel, canvases, etc. Any solution that would be more tiny, apartment friendly? Well, you don't necessarily have to do big paintings. I mean, you can get, or it doesn't necessarily have to be oil paintings. You could do like a little watercolor. I mean, you can just get a watercolor set or gouache. I picked up a gouache set. That's really not a bad option because gouache can be used very transparent like watercolor, or it can be used more opaque like you would with acrylics or oils. And it is water soluble, so you wouldn't have to deal with solvents like turpentine. And you can just wash them off in the sink, that sort of thing. Um, and it could be just used in heavy paper, so you can just get like watercolor tablet and do gouache paintings and that, so you wouldn't have to have canvases or places to hang wet canvases. So yeah, I would look at maybe a simple gouache setup, just basic brushes, and you wouldn't need much more other than like an 8x10 little book to do gouache paintings in. I'm assuming this is for something very specific. I'm not going to comment on those because I don't know what entailed on that. This is good. I like the action going on here. Got this guy running on his horse. That's a good pose for him. The flames trailing behind him. I like that. This is an odd juxtaposition of like the edge of the flames are going right up into that character. This character might be able to be shifted off to the left just a little bit, so that he's not got the juxtaposition there and not lining up with that guy's thumb on this side. So yeah, I like the action from the tree being hit down here. I'd suggest breaking that end up so it's not just a perfect. Right, it looks like it was sawed off. It's so flat, but if he broke this thing off, it's going to have all these jagged edges on the end of it. So I would break that up. Maybe the whole thing doesn't have to be jagged, but part of it, right? Yeah, cool. Okay, let's jump over and look at some of his traditional pieces. I looked at some of those. This is good. As far as painting, colors are well controlled. It has a distinct style to it. The brush strokes are doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of the work to establish the flow and the texture. Alien. Okay. Alright, yeah, it looks like you probably did that from a screen capture. Just composition, colors, etc. Looks accurate. Oh, that's particularly nice. Dark Horseman. I gotta tell you, I'm not sure if this is, what media you're using, what painting medium, but it's pretty nice. There's a lot of painters out there, or artists out there right now that can't do traditional painting very well. So I would suggest being sure to keep that going. Make sure you don't lose that skill. I'm trying to get that skill back. I just haven't done it in a long time. I like the stance of the horse. It's got some attitude to it. It's kind of interesting. This bugs me a little bit compositionally, that this is like, it's almost like this tree is bending around the horse tail. It's kind of got this like force bubble around it that keeps the tree away. So I kind of feel like it should go back behind the horse, and then you create a little overlap there to add, and the overlap would actually help the depth a little bit. Portraits. Painting portraits. Just about one of the hardest things you can do. I assume this is from photo. Yeah. Well, I don't know what those people look like, so I have a hard time saying whether that's accurate or not. So the faces are very, very warm. Maybe that's just the photo that you took of it. But Yeah, we almost need to have a whole thing on just oil painting or traditional painting. Go through that. Plein air piece. Plein air means that they did it on location. It was painting live on location. And that is something that is quite difficult to do. Because when you get out of the comfortable studio setting and you're having to deal with things like changing light, because if you're out there for 2 hours painting this, the sun moves a significant amount in 2 hours, and you're going to have different shadow and light patterns during that time than you started with. So colors are going to change, values are going to change, and shapes are going to change. And you also have to deal with things like glare of the sun off of your, canvas, wind blowing, cars, people, all that stuff. So I admire that. Anybody that can do that kind of plein air piece has my respect. Yeah, I'm not sure what this guy's specialty is. Just general illustration? That's a lot of small stuff here. I'm not seeing like big changes that he needs to work on. Maybe like this, the skin are all very much the same, just kind of 1-2 tone. Doom. Yep, that's Doom for you. Otherwise, it's a real per piece sort of thing. I think this is like one of your strongest pieces. I particularly like that. There's some really good stuff on that. So if you're trying to figure out like a style going forwards, I'd suggest maybe doubling down on that approach. Instead of like the painterliness and the shape language, it has almost a Brahm-esque usage of shapes and light and dark interplay on that. I feel like that's more successful than like some of this sort of thing where it's fuzzy and you're using more texture-y things. And then like this where you use like the photo elements. I just don't feel like those are as successful. Okay, on this one, I've got to say this. These stripes are not following the the flag. All right, these need to be bending with the flag, not just going up and down a little bit, but like they need to be doing that. Okay, so I just have to toss that out there. But yeah, you got some really solid pieces, and also your traditional stuff is good too. So keep going. That's about all I can say on that. Okay, well, we're running at 2 hours. I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I'll leave a second in case somebody has any last questions. Oh, yeah. Let me go over the challenge one more time. And then we'll finish up. That was over here. And get that out. No. So, this is a character design challenge over a flat background. The character is Calypso. She is a human, maybe a satyr, something like that. And she has a animal companion. Sorry, my voice is cracking. She's not good. She's not evil. She's a neutral entity. And She is a shaman, oracle, astrologer sort of character. She does have animal legs. We're talking something like a satyr with like a deer legs, that sort of thing. Satyr somewhere almost like a fairy. If you want to embrace the satyr aspect of her, give her like the little satyr horns, a sort of slightly animalistic face, that's okay too. Uh, she should fit in the fantasy, mythological, maybe fairy, fable kind of realm. And she has a ram motif in her design. Whether she is wearing, golden ram horns, or maybe she has something fashioned to kind of have a ram appearance. Maybe she's wearing some sort of shawl that has an embroidered ram on it, or maybe her animal companion is some sort of ram creature. Again, this is a Middle Ages, ancient empire sort of time frame, and it is a female gender. She is a fairly old, kind of ancient character, but she doesn't necessarily reflect that age. So very wise, and but also not just crippled with age. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to give you guys just a lot to work with, some cues to work on. So next week, I should be available to have a stream next week. And when you do the images, just save them in JPEG and upload them to the link that I will post in the Facebook group. If you're not on Facebook group, just go to swatches.group. That's the address, swatches.group. Type that in, and a hot link you over to the Facebook group. Ask to join. And in a couple of days, I will make a Dropbox folder and post a link to it. And all you'll need to do is go to that link and drop your image into it. Save it in JPEG. And I don't need full layered PSD files. So, 2,000 pixels or so ought to do just fine. And I will put the challenge information. I'll get this information and drop it out on the Facebook group so that you can reference it a bit later. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you everyone for joining, and I appreciate everybody that put their portfolio into consideration. I am keeping all those that were submitted, so if we do it again, no need to relink your portfolio. It'll just remain in the list. So there you go. Natalie asks, it's just the first outcome or the final finished piece? We will probably take a look at some of the sketches next week, or concepts, that sort of thing. But you will have 2 weeks before the final, so that it should give you a little time to play around with that. You are free to use whatever style that you want and whatever medium. It doesn't have to be digital. It can be traditional if you like. And all skill levels are welcomed. I will try to judge the piece, your particular piece, based on your particular skill level. There you go. All right, that's it for now. Thanks again, and I appreciate you joining. I'll sign off for now. Until you see you next time, keep drawing.